It is not unusual to hear women, as in females, but older females, who will share with us that they just got diagnosed. And sometimes, actually a lot of times, it's because they have a child themselves who has autism. And in getting the services, seeking the diagnosis, and everything that has to go in to getting services for your child as a mom, a lot of us will go, oh my goodness, I remember this when I was young. I went through so many of the same challenges. And a lot of times that will kind of instigate a conversation with their mom, who will then say, oh, yeah, but I had no support. I had nobody telling me that I should worry about this and that you would outgrow it. So sadly, a lot of females go through some really hard times when they are young. And hopefully, by the time they're an adult, they kind of figure things out. But there is no reason for us to be in that same space today. 20 plus years ago, maybe, because, information was a lot more limited. But we have literally information at our fingertips in our phones, on our computers, on our TVs. So there are lots of great ways in order to gain the information that we need. So I just wanted to share with you a few things. This is certainly not, the full list, but I just wanted to talk about a few things that are a little bit more found a little bit more in females than in males on the autism spectrum. Now, just like autism in general, if you've seen one person with autism, you've seen one person with autism. So some of the things I'm going to talk about today are definitely not across the spectrum for all females. There are some females on the spectrum who you see the signs very early on, and they may be nonverbal. They may have some significant behaviors. They may engage in a lot of repetitive behaviors, have really delayed social skills. And so the more classic the autism, it should be the earlier the recognition by your pediatrician. So if you have a girl on the autism spectrum who is, say, 18 months old or older, who is not mimicking any, communication that you're giving them, right? So for most of us, when we have children, we're teaching them how to say mama, dada, how to make sounds. And then they start to babble. So if you have a child who's not yet doing that and they're 18 months, just have those serious conversations with your pediatrician. Because there are some girls on the spectrum who do have a lot of the more significant signs of autism. And so you definitely want to seek help for them. Primarily what I'm going to be talking about today are the females that kind of get missed. So they don't get recognized. And we still do have a 4-to-1 ratio. So for every 4 boys, there is 1 girl. So it's not as common in girls. However, there is a growing line of thought that it is not that it's not that much. So it's not a 4-to-1 ratio. It's actually less. But because we just haven't done a great job in recognize the girls who are pretty capable of a lot of academic or language-based activities, they go unrecognized. So we think that it's probably a little bit more, but for the sake of research right now, it tells us that it is a 4-to-1 ratio. So that means that professionals might be a little less capable of identifying some of the females that we're not going to talk about today. So imaginative play or emotional words. A lot of time, the girls on the spectrum may really engage in imaginative play. So much to the point to where they're continuing to engage in imaginative play when typical girls have already kind of moved past that. So kind of getting stuck in what they really enjoyed. And when they were 4, 5, 6, maybe even 7 years old, they were able to do that with the typical girls. So they were able to engage with them in the imaginative play. And then once the typical girls were like, okay, we're kind of done with that now, the girl on the spectrum made to understand, why are we done with that? Why are we moving on? And I was really comfortable there. So they may kind of be stuck there, and then that tends to make them sort of stand out to the typical girls, because it's like, why is she not following us? Why is she still doing that? So you can look for that. A lot of times Their language is kind of precocious and they have really incredible vocabularies. And so you can, look into that. Some of them have something called, and this is both in girls and boys, hyperlexia or being hyperlexic. And that's where maybe even at the age of 2, they're already beginning to read. So you can kind of Google that and check that out. Interest, like significant interest in not just objects, but in like animals or maybe even a friend at school, to where she just wants to be with that friend all the time. And she doesn't understand why that friend wants to play with other friends. So kind of getting stuck in that regimented interest. Could be animals. I know a little girl who loves to collect these little characters, and she just has them everywhere. And she knows if one is missing, and she probably literally has hundreds, but she can take a quick glance and know exactly in a split second if one is missing. Sometimes girls get very obsessive, such as that example. So, knowing exactly what's going to come next and how it's going to flow and what the expectation is going to be can be, really a significant need that they have. And when things do not go the way that they think that they should, which kind of is life, they tend to really have a strong emotional response. Social interaction. So what we tend to see is that girls at this type of level of autism, they have more interest in having friends and being friends, but may not have the skills to do that in a way that is accepted by the typically developing girls, particularly at those older ages. So between 8 and teenagehood. It tends to improve when kids, move on from school and maybe go into college, because then everybody is kind of more focused on, okay, what's my outcome going to be? And they're driven, right? Especially for girls who go on to college. They're surrounded by people who are driven by whatever the passion is that got them there. And so they don't really tend to stand out. Where in the lower grades and up through middle school particularly is huge. What they have to endure every day just to try to fit in. There is a word that maybe you have heard called masking. And I have talked to countless numbers of women on the spectrum who have told me that their entire childhood was filled with them masking their autistic traits just so that they could feel like they fit in and that they were accepted by others. And that is a very sad and stressful situation. Imagine going through the day, every day, pretending to be someone you are not. The amount of pressure and focus that has to be unloaded in order to do that is astronomical. I talk to parents of girls that say that when they get in the car at the end of the school day, they just let it out. And it's not uncommon to hear stories where they cry and they just feel completely mentally exhausted. And so you definitely want to watch for that. Nobody should have to mask who they are in life, especially not in school, where we send them because we trust the school, right? Or you can homeschool. So if you trust your school, you want to trust your school, you want to know that they are caring for your child. And that means that your child should not be bullied. They should not be harassed. They should be supported by their teacher and the students around them. That the guidance counselor should provide whatever services they need. If your school has special education counseling, you could check that person out as well. A speech language pathologist can help that girl interact with other girls in a way that is age appropriate. The one thing that we hear quite often is, oh, well, it's fine. It's fine. It's not really a big deal. Well, maybe it's not a big deal for you, and it doesn't appear to be a big deal because the girl isn't having these behavioral episodes in a classroom. But if she is burying all of that garbage every day, she's not going to be a happy kid. And the one thing that all of us parents want for our children, and it doesn't matter who our kids are, is that they are happy. And so the good news is that there are things that you can do about that. And so talk to your school. You definitely do not want masking to go on and on, because if there is no intervention, it can go on and on. And girls need to be taught how to deal with that and how to recognize that that is not okay for other people to treat them in a way that makes them feel like they have to mask. As a result of the masking, there appears from recent data to be a higher level of anxiety, depression, suicidal ideation in females than in males. We find this with typical girls as well. Social media has really done a number on young females. The most recent studies on 13-year-old females and suicide is off the charts. And so if you can, and I know it's hard, keep your kids off of social media as much as possible, especially when they're kids. Now, I know, as kids get older and they're young adults, hopefully they've been taught, the dangers of social media. But particularly for girls, and girls that are very trusting of others, social media can actually lead to physical harm. Because if someone acts as though they're befriending them, and maybe that girl doesn't have any friends in real life, but online she does, she may feel great about that, and that person may not be a good person. So there are apps that you can get where parents can sort of monitor the social media and literally everything your child does with their phone. There's one called Bark, and I will go ahead and put the link below so that you can kind of check that out. But you definitely need to monitor what your kids are engaging in on phones, because again, that is not just an autism thing, that is females in general. And we want to make sure that they understand the safety precautions that females just have to know more about than males. It is just kind of the way society still is. Maybe one day that will change, but for right now, it's just what it is. So we want to make sure that we give our girls on the spectrum all of the skills that they need in order to size up a situation, know if it's dangerous or not, and then what do I do? Who do I report to? Who do I talk to if I think something is unsafe? Instead of kind of going off, they might think that a friend of theirs is acting unsafe, and they might literally make it into something that it's not. So teaching them how to go to somebody that's trustworthy and say, she said this or that to me, or she's behaving this way to me. Is this a safe situation? Should she be doing this to me or saying this to me? Kind of being a sounding board. I know a lot of kids who have like a check-in safe person in school, particularly at the middle and high school ages. So talk to your school about designating a safe person. That way your kids have someone to go to just to say, I just don't know if this is good or not. So can you kind of help me out with that? And then if it's not, what tools can you give me to go and talk to that person? Or maybe it's a situation where the adult needs to go and talk to the other kid. Okay? All right. Well, again, this wasn't everything, but just some things to think about if you have a daughter or you are a woman and you think, you know what, maybe I am on the autism spectrum. And I know just a lot of people in general who were diagnosed as adults who told me just how much better they felt after the diagnosis, because they always felt that something was unique and something that was just different than the bulk of the other kids in school. But they could never put their finger on it, and everybody always made light of any of the concerns that they had. And so they went through childhood like that, struggling silently. And once they get that diagnosis, it's like a weight had been lifted off of their shoulders. So if that's you, check with a local psychologist, counselor, and talk to people in your area who know a bit more about autism than maybe you do. And they can kind of be your guide into figuring out not only if you have autism, but also what are some of the things that you could do to make your life a little bit easier and a lot more meaningful. Okay? I'm glad that you guys joined me today. Stick around for more podcasts in the near future. Thanks.